Millionaire hires new employee but goes pale when he notices the expensive watch she's wearing. The revelation will surprise you. The ballroom was softly illuminated, reflecting the splendor of the charity gala that Henry Thompson had organized in his mansion. The walls were adorned with contemporary art pieces, and the aroma of fine dishes and rare wines filled the air. Henry, an elegant British millionaire, circulated among the guests, always with a courteous smile, but his mind was elsewhere. This evening was meant to be a celebration, yet he felt an inexplicable unease. It was then that he spotted her. Emily Ward stood in a corner of the ballroom, draped in a blue silk dress that accentuated her curves and highlighted her dark hair, cascading in soft waves over her shoulders. There was something enigmatic about her presence, something that drew gazes but also maintained an aura of mystery. What truly captured Henry's attention, however, was the watch that adorned her wrist, an impressive piece with a classic design and a sparkle that seemed to conceal secrets. Henry approached her, his heart racing as he introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Henry Thompson. I couldn't help but notice you are the most intriguing person at this gala." Emily turned, surprised, but soon a shy smile formed on her lips. "Hello, Henry. I'm Emily Ward. I appreciate the compliment, but you should know that tonight is about charity, not about me." "That's true, but I can't help my curiosity. That watch, it's stunning. Does it have a story?" he asked, gesturing gently toward the accessory. She hesitated for a moment, her expression shifting slightly. "It's a gift from my father, a symbol of what we once were." Her voice was soft, but there was a depth that Henry couldn't ignore. "It seems to carry significant weight," he observed, noticing how her eyes averted as if the memory of the past was painful. "If you don't mind, I would love to hear more about it." Emily looked at him, weighing the sincerity in his gaze. "It's not easy to talk about. My father was a businessman who, unfortunately, couldn't keep the family together." She paused, searching for the words. "He gave me this watch as a reminder that we should always value what truly matters." Henry felt an inexplicable connection to Emily. "I understand. Sometimes the most valuable things come with stories of struggle and overcoming. But you seem to be doing well. What do you do now?" "I work in an art gallery. I believe that art can heal even the deepest wounds." The sparkle in her eyes as she spoke was contagious, and Henry found himself captivated. "You definitely should show me your gallery someday. It seems you have a unique vision," he suggested, taking a step closer. The two continued chatting, and the chemistry between them was palpable. However, while Henry lost himself in Emily's eyes, a shadow lingered over his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this fascinating woman. The watch on her wrist seemed like just the tip of the iceberg. In the following days, Henry's curiosity grew. He began investigating Emily's life, diving into old records and news articles. What he discovered intrigued him. Emily's father had been a failed businessman with a history of dealings with Henry's father. An old unpaid debt emerged from the pages of history, casting a dark light on what could be a connection between their families. "I can't believe that debt is still lingering between us," Henry murmured to himself, unpleasant memories of stories told by his mother surfacing in his mind. He felt torn between the growing attraction he felt for Emily and the revelation of the rivalry between their families. A mix of desire and guilt began to haunt him. That night, as he watched Emily from a distance, the beauty and sadness in her gaze consumed him. He knew he needed to uncover the truth behind her past, not just to understand her story, but also to know if he could have a future alongside her. Henry was in his office, engulfed in heavy thoughts after the revelation about his family's debt. He couldn't understand how such a significant detail had slipped past him all his life. The weight of the revelation made him stand up abruptly and head to the living room where his mother sat, looking out the window. The soft afternoon sunlight illuminated her face, but it couldn't dissipate the shadow of worry that hovered over her. "Mom," Henry began, his voice a bit hesitant, "I need to talk to you about something I discovered." She turned slowly, her eyes wide, as if she already knew the conversation wouldn't be easy. "What happened, son?" "About the debt my father had with Emily's father," he said, trying to remain calm. "Why didn't you ever tell me about this?" His mother's expression changed instantly, and Henry realized that the memory of that debt was a painful wound. "Henry, that's a painful chapter of our history. Your father always hoped to resolve it without dragging you into the rivalry it could cause. But that means the downfall of the Ward family was somehow linked to our fortune. And now I feel guilty." It's not fair that Emily should pay for something I didn't even know existed, he spoke, feeling indignation rise within him. Guilty? She shook her head, her gaze distant. It's not your fault, my dear. Life is full of consequences that we often don't understand. I can't ignore this, Mom. Emily isn't just an employee. She's a woman with a story that is intertwined with ours, insisted Henry. His voice was rising, frustration overflowing. At that moment, Charles entered the room, interrupting the conversation. He sensed the tension in the air and smiled sardonically. What do we have here? A moment of family reflection? I hope you're not talking about that employee's watch. It's just a trinket, isn't it? It's not just a trinket. Henry turned quickly, his anger already evident. It's a symbol of something much greater, Charles. And you know that. Charles let out a contemptuous laugh. I think you're just letting yourself be carried away by youthful passion. This woman may not be who you think she is. What if I told you she had a romance with me in our youth? Henry's heart raced. You're lying, he shot back, his eyes blazing. Emily isn't like you. She's a dignified woman, not a schemer like you. Dignified? Do you really believe that? She might be here for your money, Henry. Think about it. It might be better for you to keep your distance, Charles said with a look of disdain. Henry, now conflicted, felt a wave of concern. You don't know what you're talking about. Emily is different. She fights her own demons, and I admire that. Admiration is one thing, but do you really think she's the right woman for you? You have a reputation to uphold, Charles provoked, his gaze calculating. And yours is that of a manipulator. I won't let you ruin what we have, Charles. You can't use Emily as a weapon against me, Henry replied, his voice firm, though his insides were churning. As the brothers argued, Henry's mother watched, worried. She knew that the rivalry between her sons was escalating, and that Charles could be a negative influence on Henry. Enough, she intervened, standing up. We need to stop this conversation. Henry, you need to listen to your heart. And Charles, you must respect your brother's decision. But the tension had already settled in. Henry knew there was something deeper at play, and that Emily's presence in his life was about to bring to light secrets that everyone preferred to forget. The rivalry between their families was a legacy that could not be ignored, and he was determined to understand what was really happening. Henry had become obsessed with Emily's watch. For weeks, he couldn't shake the piece from his mind. The shine of the metal and the delicacy of the design attracted him in a nearly hypnotic way. That object was not just an accessory. It was a symbol of something much greater, a key that could unlock the doors to a past he didn't fully comprehend, both Emily's and his own. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in his office, Henry decided it was time to dig deeper. He remembered a famous watch designer known for creating pieces for the elite. With a click, he searched the internet for the name of the designer engraved on the back of Emily's watch, Augustus Sterling. The information that appeared on his screen intrigued him. The designer was known for his ability to create watches that were not only functional but also carried stories. Each piece had a heritage, a legacy that transcended generations. With each new discovery, Henry felt increasingly compelled to unravel the secrets surrounding the watch. "What are you hiding, Emily?" he murmured to himself, his hands trembling slightly as he typed. He knew there was a connection between Emily's story and his own, but he couldn't see it clearly. What he didn't know was that this connection was deeper than he imagined. That night, during dinner at an upscale restaurant, Henry decided it was time to address the topic with Emily. He watched her as she talked about trivial matters, her eyes sparkling under the lights of the venue. "Emily," he began, his voice soft yet firm, "could you tell me more about your watch?" She hesitated, her expression shifting slightly. "Oh, the watch. It's just a gift from my father," she said. But Henry noticed the shadow of sadness in her gaze. "He always said that time is precious, and that we should cherish every moment. But it's not just that, is it?" Henry insisted, sensing there was more behind that piece. "I think it has a story to tell." With a deep sigh, Emily finally relented. "This watch was a farewell gift. My father was facing financial difficulties when he gave it to me. He wanted me to remember that even in tough times, time is an ally. But at the same time, it's a reminder of what we've lost." Henry realized that the watch was not just a symbol of a glorious past, but also an emotional burden that Emily carried. "If you want, I can help uncover the story behind it," he suggested, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't know if I want that, Henry," she replied, a hint of pain in her voice. "Sometimes the past is better left behind." but the connection between them was deepening, and that could not be ignored. Henry felt a wave of empathy for Emily, understanding that, like the watch, he also carried his own scars. "I understand that you want to protect your heart," he said, "but I think facing the past could help us move forward." By the end of dinner, as they said their goodbyes, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that his fate was intertwined with Emily's. He bid her farewell with a light touch on her arm, a gesture that made her heart race. "Tomorrow I'd like to visit your old mansion. I feel like there's something there that could help us better understand what's happening." Emily looked into Henry's eyes, and for a moment, everything felt possible. "If you think that's what we need, then okay," she replied, reluctant but with a glimmer of hope. "But I must warn you, what we find could be painful." "I'm ready for that," Henry affirmed, determined. With each step they took together, he felt he was getting closer not only to Emily, but also to a truth that could change their lives forever. Henry decided to visit Emily's old mansion on a cloudy afternoon. The air was thick with the moisture of the approaching rain, and he felt a mix of anxiety and curiosity as he drove down a road flanked by tall, dark trees. The mansion, a majestic yet weathered structure, seemed to hold secrets in every one of its walls. As he parked the car, Henry hesitated for a moment, recalling Emily's words about her past. She always spoke of the mansion with a blend of nostalgia and pain, as if every corner held both good and bad memories. With a deep breath, he stepped out of the car and walked toward the door, which creaked open, as if protesting against the intrusion. Inside, the mansion exuded a smell of mildew and aged wood. The dim light illuminated the entrance hall, where an imposing staircase rose to the second floor. Henry felt a chill run down his spine. The house had a life of its own, but a life marked by past tragedies. He remembered the watch Emily wore, a symbol of a legacy she was trying to leave behind. "Emily?" he called, his voice echoing off the empty walls. There was no answer, only a silence that seemed to carry the history of the Ward family. He decided to explore. He wandered down the hallway, observing the framed portraits that adorned the walls. Most of them depicted people with solemn expressions, as if they were eternally mourning something that could never be regained. When he reached a living room, Henry noticed a dusty bookshelf. He ran his fingers over the volumes, feeling the dust beneath his nails. A particular book caught his attention, a diary bound in worn leather. With his heart racing, he pulled it from the shelf, opening it carefully. The pages were yellowed but still legible. "My dear Edward," the reading began, "the debt we owe to the Thompsons is a burden that weighs heavily upon us. I don't know how we will overcome it, but we must maintain the dignity of our family." The words hit Henry like a punch to the stomach. He continued reading, uncovering details about the collapse of the Ward family, the financial ruin, and the betrayal that unfolded between the two clans. How could this have happened? Henry murmured to himself as the reality began to take shape in his mind. He was connected to this story in a way he had never imagined. He felt guilty, as if his own wealth had contributed to Emily's downfall. His mind swirled with questions. How could he love someone so deeply while also being part of her pain? In that moment, the door of the mansion opened, and Emily walked in, her eyes wide with surprise upon seeing Henry there. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling. I found your father's diary," Henry replied, holding the book as if it were proof of something undeniable. "It talks about the debt and how it destroyed your family." Emily looked at the diary, her face paling. "You shouldn't have come here, Henry. This is too painful." "But I needed to understand. I can't remain ignorant about this," he insisted, determination shining in his eyes. "I feel so guilty. What does my wealth mean when I know it brought you pain?" "You aren't responsible for what happened, Henry. No one could have predicted what would occur," Emily replied, her voice softening as she stepped closer to him. "But the pain still exists, and the truth doesn't change that." They fell silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of the situation. Henry closed the diary and looked into Emily's eyes, seeking a connection. "I want you to know that I'm here for you. No matter what happens, I want to fight for us." Emily looked away, a mix of hope and sorrow in her heart. "And if this fight brings us more pain, are you willing to take that risk?" "I don't know what the future holds, but I can't just give up on us," Henry replied, feeling a wave of emotion. "We have to face this together." She took a deep breath, struggling against tears. "I just hope we can find a way to heal, because the pain of the past is a weight I carry, and I don't know if I can let it go." Henry squeezed her hand, a simple but meaningful gesture. "Then let's face this together. I'm not perfect, but I want to be someone you can trust." The tension between them eased a bit, but the shadow of the past still loomed over the mansion, reminding them that the battle was far from over. They were ready to confront whatever came next, but the journey would be long and filled with challenges. The gala that Henry organized was an event filled with luxury and sophistication. The twinkling lights reflected off the crystal glasses, and the elegant attire of the guests who mingled in the vast hall. The air was fragrant with fresh flowers and exotic dishes, but amid all this splendor, an invisible tension hung over the atmosphere. Henry, in a perfectly tailored suit, anxiously awaited Emily's entrance. She glided through the hall like a vision, her exotic presence and the gleaming watch on her wrist drawing admiring glances. As she greeted the guests, a knot of anxiety tightened in Henry's stomach. He knew Emily's past, tied to the Ward family and the hidden debt, was a sensitive topic. Yet in his heart he believed they could overcome the obstacles. However, when Charles, his brother, appeared at the party, his confidence faltered. Charles, with a sardonic smile and a calculating gaze, seemed eager to make his move. "Ah, Henry, what a magnificent party you've organized," Charles began, his tone dripping with irony. "But I wonder if all the guests are aware of what really goes on behind the curtains." "What are you talking about, Charles?" Henry replied, trying to stay calm, though his heart raced. "You know exactly what I mean. The beautiful Emily, with her glorious past, or should I say tragic?" He laughed, a laugh that froze Henry's blood. "She may have the watch, but we can't forget that she carries a legacy of ruin. Her secrets won't stay hidden forever." Henry felt his face heat with anger. "You have no right to speak about her that way. Emily is a strong woman and deserves respect." "Respect? Or are you just trying to redeem your own conscience?" The sarcasm in Charles's voice was palpable, and guests began to turn their attention to them. "Maybe you should rethink this relationship. Don't forget what happened to her family. You could be the next one dragged down." Henry, now furious, took a deep breath and decided it was time to put an end to the provocation. "If you don't stop, I'll have to ask you to leave. You're not going to ruin this night for me and Emily." But Charles didn't back down. He stepped closer, almost whispering in Henry's ear. "Do you really believe that this love story is all you need? Her watch isn't just a symbol of a glorious past. It's a reminder that your family never paid the debt that destroyed her life. And the truth always comes to light, Henry." The tension in the air was almost palpable, and murmurs spread among the guests as they observed the confrontation between the brothers. Henry turned, searching for Emily in the crowd, but his heart sank when he saw her. Charles, sensing the moment's fragility, decided to strike. "Emily, my dear," he called out, his voice echoing through the hall. "Come here, we need to talk. The guests need to know the truth about your father, the truth you've been hiding for so long." All eyes turned to Emily, who, upon hearing her name, stopped conversing with a group of women and looked toward the two brothers. Her smile faded as she perceived the situation. "Charles, please don't do this," she said, her voice trembling. "This isn't the time or the place." "Of course it is," Charles responded, looking at the crowd. "Everyone deserves to know that you're not the only one who has suffered. Your family ruined ours, and you're still here as if nothing has happened." The murmurs in the room grew. The atmosphere that was once festive turned heavy. Henry, feeling Emily's humiliation, could no longer stay silent. He turned with anger towards Charles. "Enough! You're not going to do this to her. Okay, you don't understand anything about what she's been through or what we're building together. Building or destroying. Look around you, Henry. No one is here to applaud this love story you're trying to sell. They're here to watch the scandal unfold." Emily, tears in her eyes, began to walk away, her face pale and the expression of pain etched on it. "Henry, I can't do this. I'm sorry, but I can't stay." "Emily, no, wait!" Henry shouted as she moved away, the anguish visible in each step she took. Despair washed over him, and he realized that the night, which should have been a celebration, had turned into a nightmare. The echo of Charles's mocking laughter still lingered in the air as Henry felt helpless. Tormented by the humiliation his beloved had suffered, he hurried down the stone path leading to the mansion, his heart racing in his chest. The party had been a disaster. Charles had ruthlessly exposed Emily's secrets, and now he feared she was slipping away from him forever. Upon reaching the old wooden door, he hesitated for a moment, the moonlight filtering through the dusty windows, creating an atmosphere of nostalgia and pain. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Emily?" he called, his voice echoing in the somber silence of the place. The door slowly opened, revealing Emily, her eyes red and swollen, a shadow of her former self. Her dress was wrinkled, and the watch on her wrist seemed to glow with a melancholic intensity. She looked at him, her expression a mix of sadness and anger. "Why did you come, Henry?" she asked, her tone heavy with conflicting emotions. "There's nothing left to say." "No, you're wrong. There's so much to say," he pleaded, taking a step closer. "I can't leave you like this. You don't deserve the pain Charles caused you. You don't understand, Henry. He exposed everything, and I don't know how to deal with that." Emily looked away, staring at the ground as if the stones beneath her feet could offer some solace. "I understand more than you imagine," he said, his voice gentle as he moved even closer. "I didn't know our past was intertwined like this. I'm sorry for everything you've endured because of the rivalry between our families." She raised her eyes and Henry saw the internal struggle unfolding within them. The watch on her wrist seemed to pulse with each beat of her heart, as if calling him to uncover the truth. "Henry," she sighed, "what I wanted most was to forget. This watch, it symbolizes a past I'd rather not relive. It's a constant reminder of my family's ruin. But maybe this watch isn't just a symbol of pain," he said, his voice firm. "Maybe it's also a symbol of hope, a new beginning." Emily hesitated, her emotions in turmoil. "How can you say that? It reminds me that I am the daughter of a man who failed." "And you are not that, Emily. You are so much more. You are strong, intelligent, and above all, you are someone I love," he confessed, the words spilling from his mouth before he could hold them back. She looked at him in surprise, the confession hanging in the air between them. "Love? How can you love someone who carries so much weight from her past?" "Because I see beyond the past. I see you." He moved even closer, his eyes locked on hers. "And I want to fight for you. For us. Don't let the past define what we can have together." Emily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. What he said was true. The watch, which had always been a symbol of pain, now seemed to carry a new meaning. "But what if I can't get over this? What if Charles is right about us? Then we will face it together," Henry promised. "I won't let you go. Not again. Let's unravel the secrets of the past and find a way forward." She felt a mix of hope and fear. "What if what we find is even more painful? Then we will face the pain together," he repeated, gently holding her hand. "Please don't leave me. Let's build something new, something that's just ours." In that moment, something shifted between them. Emily's watch, which had long been a symbol of sadness, now seemed to pulse with new life. She took a deep breath, deciding to open her heart to him. Maybe I'm ready to try, for a new beginning." Before she could say more, Henry leaned in, their lips meeting in a soft yet intense kiss. The watch glimmered under the moonlight, as if witnessing the union of two souls who, despite the adversities, were willing to fight for a future together. Henry was sitting on the sofa in the mansion, the moonlight streaming through the tall windows, when Emily walked into the room, her eyes reddened and her expression weary. The atmosphere between them was tense, as if a storm was about to break. He stood up, but before he could say anything, she interrupted him. "Henry, we need to talk," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I can't keep going like this, not knowing if you really love me or if this is just a way for you to redeem yourself because of what happened with my family." Henry's heart tightened. He knew the ghosts of the past were weighing on them, but he hadn't expected her to put her feelings into such raw words. "Emily, I love you. It was never about redemption, I promise." She crossed her arms, challenging him. "How can I believe that? You're a millionaire and I'm just an employee. Don't you see the looks people give me? Don't you see the disdain your family has for me? And now your brother is trying to push me away from you. Why? Because he knows I'm a threat to the image you've built." Henry felt a wave of frustration and helplessness. "Charles doesn't control me, and he definitely doesn't control you. What he does is manipulation, and I won't let that ruin what we have." "But he's right about something," Emily said, her voice calmer but firm. "I'm a burden to you, Henry. Your reputation, your family, all of it is at stake because of me." "That's not true," Henry exclaimed, anger rising. "You're the only thing I truly want. What matters is what we feel, not what others think." "Then tell me, do you feel comfortable being in a relationship with someone who could tarnish your name? Who could bring up secrets you never wanted to face?" Her eyes were filled with tears, but the determination in her voice was clear. He hesitated, her question hitting him hard. "If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be here now, fighting against everything and everyone. What I feel for you is real, and I don't care what Charles or anyone else thinks." "So hearing you say that now, But what about when the pressure mounts? What will happen when Charles reveals all the truths about the past? Will you stand by my side, or will you pull away like everyone else? Henry's expression shifted. He had never considered the possibility that the pressure could become too much. Emily, I'm not like them. I'm not my brother. I want to fight for us. But you have your insecurities too, don't you? I can't be the only one to see that. She stepped closer, her voice softer but still filled with pain. You're afraid I might drag you down, that I could ruin everything you've built. I'm afraid of losing you, he confessed, the vulnerability in his voice echoing in the silence of the room. But I also know I can't let that tear us apart. I won't let Charles win. Emily looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. And if I don't know what to do? What if I decide I can't stay anymore? What will you do then, Henry? I will fight for you, he replied, determination returning to his gaze. I will do whatever it takes to show you that you deserve to be by my side, no matter how difficult it gets. I can't let you walk away. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. Then prove it, not just with words but with actions, because deep down I don't want to be a burden. I want you to see me as your partner, not as a responsibility. Henry stepped toward her, his heart racing. You are everything I've ever wanted, Emily. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise I will fight for us. Always. The tension between them began to dissipate, but insecurity still lingered in the air. They were at a critical juncture where words and actions intertwined, and only time would tell if they could overcome the shadows of the past or be consumed by them. As the night wore on, the atmosphere in the mansion remained thick with tension and distrust. Charles, ever watchful, sensed Emily's vulnerability and the opportunity it presented. He approached her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, fingers intertwined as if plotting a trick. You know, Emily, he began with a tone meant to be comforting, I genuinely care about you. Henry may not be the person you think he is. Emily, still shaken by the events of the party, lifted her eyes to Charles, her expression a mix of confusion and pain. What do you mean by that? Her voice trembled, but she tried to maintain her resolve. I just want you to know the truth. The debt your father never paid. Well, what most people don't know is that he was directly involved in the downfall of your family. Henry may seem like a charming prince, but he's just as guilty as the others who caused the Ward's ruin, Charles asserted, his gaze piercing. Charles's words echoed in Emily's mind like a distant chime. She wanted to believe in Henry, but her brother's insinuations were like thorns, piercing the trust she was trying to build. That doesn't make sense. Henry can't be responsible for something that happened before he was born, she protested, her voice rising. But Charles continued, relentless. But he is, dear. His father made a deal with yours, a deal that wasn't honored. And if you get involved with him, you're just putting yourself on a path of betrayal and pain. It's not worth it, he said, his voice softer, almost seductive. Emily felt the pressure increase. Charles's words were venomous, but he had a way of presenting them as universal truths. She stepped away from him, trying to find her own center. I need time to think, she murmured, looking at the floor where the reflections of the lights danced. Meanwhile, Henry wandered through the house, his mind swirling with Charles's revelation. He felt cornered, as if an immense weight were being placed on his shoulders. The thought that his family might have caused Emily's ruin haunted him. He recalled moments when he spoke of his parents as if they were heroes. It can't be true, he muttered to himself, feeling a tightening in his chest. It was then that Emily entered the room, her gaze lost, that he realized he couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation. Henry, she said, her voice heavy with emotion, we need to talk. He approached her, concerned. What happened? Are you okay? The sincerity in his voice was palpable. Charles, he told me some things about the debt between our families. He insinuated that you were involved in my family's downfall, Emily revealed, each word coming out slowly, as if she were weighing every syllable. Henry felt a chill run down his spine. What? That can't be true. I never knew of any agreement between our parents that involved this. He stepped closer to her, desperately trying to convince her of his innocence. I never wanted you to feel this way, Emily. The last thing I want is for you to think I'm responsible for what happened to your family. Emily looked into his eyes, searching for honesty, but her mind was clouded. Charles said you were partially responsible, that your father could have prevented it. I don't know who to believe. Tears began to form in her eyes, and Henry felt powerless. I will find out the truth, Henry declared, determination in his voice. "I can't let Charles manipulate you like this. I will confront this issue and clear everything up." He took Emily's hand, feeling her fragility beneath his touch. "I don't want you to pull away from me. Let's figure this out together." Emily hesitated, her heart torn between the love she felt for Henry and her brother's treacherous words. "I need time, Henry. I need to understand all of this." "I understand," he replied, his voice tinged with pain. "But know that I'm here for you. I will always be here." With that, Emily stepped away, leaving Henry alone in the room, surrounded by shadows and uncertainties. He took a deep breath, determined not to let Charles's lies destroy what he had built with Emily. But the battle was just beginning, and he knew he needed to face the ghosts of the past to secure a future with her. Henry had become obsessed with Emily's watch. After weeks of uncertainty and painful revelations, he decided he needed to fully understand this enigmatic object that now symbolized not only Emily's past, but the intersection of their lives. On a quiet night, as the city lit up under a starry sky, Henry sat in his library surrounded by old books and family documents. The watch rested on the table, shining under the soft lamplight. With a pen in hand and a notepad open, he began to draw the intricate symbols that adorned the watch's face. "Why are you so important?" he murmured to himself, examining each detail with care. Time seemed to stand still, and he lost himself in thought. In his mind, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. He remembered the conversations he had with Emily, where she mentioned her father and the symbolism the watch carried. "It's not just an object, it's a legacy, a story," he thought, his mind buzzing with the possibility that the watch held more than just the passage of time. At that moment, he decided to dig deeper. He got up, determination fueling his steps as he headed to the safe where he kept old documents related to his family and the Ward family. At the back of the safe, he found a velvet box that he rarely opened. Upon lifting the lid, he discovered yellowed letters and financial records of his father. With trembling hands, he began to sift through the papers until a letter caught his eye. The sender was Emily's father. "My dear friend," the letter began, "I feel that our friendship is at risk due to business matters that have become more complicated than we anticipated." Henry read and reread, each word weighing on him like an anchor. The letter spoke of a debt that Emily's father had in relation to the business that united their families. "This can't be true," he whispered, the revelation hitting him like a punch to the gut. The debt was not just financial, it was a symbol of betrayal and distrust between two families that had once been friends. Still in shock, Henry looked at the watch again. "You have something to tell me," he said aloud, as if the object could respond. He recalled a conversation he had with Emily, where she mentioned that the watch was a gift from her father, a promise of a new beginning. But how could it be a new beginning if the past still haunted them? With his mind racing, he noticed a small button on the side of the watch that he had never seen before. He pressed it gently, and the face of the watch opened with a soft click, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside there was a carefully folded piece of paper. Henry pulled it out, his heart racing, and began to unfold it. As he did, his hands trembled. The handwritten words were unmistakable. "The truth will always find a way," the message read. "Beware of the ties that are not seen. Betrayal can come from those you least expect." Henry's heart raced. He felt as if a fog had lifted, revealing a deeper truth about his own life and choices. The watch was not just a symbol of the past, but also a warning about the future. Henry left the paper on the table, the weight of his discoveries starting to crystallize in his mind. He had seen his relationship with Emily as a chance for redemption, but now he realized that they were also prisoners of a legacy they hadn't built. "What do I do with this?" he spoke to himself, his voice echoing in the empty room. The need to protect Emily and the urgency to confront Charles pulsed in his heart. The watch, once a mere decorative object, was now becoming a symbol of a new journey they would need to face together, a journey marked by trust and the search for the truth. The light from the lamp flickered as if the universe itself was responding to his questions. Henry knew he needed to find Emily, not just to share what he had discovered, but to show her that they were in this fight together. And so, with renewed determination, he prepared to face whatever was to come, armed not only with the watch, but with the knowledge that every second counted in the pursuit of a different future. The atmosphere in the room was tense, almost palpable. Charles, with his sarcastic smile, faced Henry with a challenging glint in his eyes. "Did you really think you could escape the truth, brother?" he said, his voice laced with contempt. The real betrayal didn't come from you, but from the agreement our parents made. An agreement that could have saved the Ward family. Henry frowned, confused. What are you talking about, Charles? What agreement? He felt his stomach churn, as if a storm was about to brew inside him. Charles stepped closer, moving towards Henry. Don't you remember? Your father and mine were inseparable in their glory days. They had a pact, a commitment to protect each other's families. But when everything fell apart, your father decided that the debt was more important than friendship. That destroyed the Wards. This doesn't make sense. My father always talked about business and honor. He would never have done that intentionally, Henry replied, his voice shaking with indignation. Honor? Do you really think that means anything in the business world? Charles laughed, a cold, cutting laugh. What matters is profit. And your father decided that profit was more important than the life of a family. He left my father in ruins, and now you, with your fortune, are a mirror of that dark past. Henry felt anger rising within him, but confusion lingered. He remembered the stories his mother told about the friendship between their two fathers. Yet what Charles said seemed to have a ring of truth. And Emily's watch? What does that have to do with anything? Charles smiled, a grin that made Henry's blood boil. Oh, the watch. A symbol you believed to be just a gift, but in fact, it belonged to an ancestor who was a friend of the Ward family. The debt your father collected, the collapse of the family, it all has a deep connection. What you see as a curse may very well be a curse you inherited. Charles's words echoed in Henry's mind, but he refused to believe it all. You're just trying to manipulate me again, Charles. You don't care about the truth, you just want to drive me away from Emily. She's a distraction, Henry. Can't you see? What you feel for her is just an attempt to redeem yourself, to cleanse your conscience. But the truth is, you're just as guilty as our father. Henry's heart raced. He recalled Emily, her beauty, her strength, and the suffering she had endured. He couldn't let her suffer because of a past he hadn't created. You don't understand anything about love, Charles, he shouted, frustration spilling over. I won't abandon her because of a debt I didn't incur. Then prove it, Charles challenged, crossing his arms. Prove that you truly love her. Face the truth about what you and your family did. Do you really think she'll stand by your side knowing you're part of what destroyed her life? The tension in the room was palpable. Henry, driven by a sudden impulse, decided that he would no longer allow Charles to manipulate him. I will uncover the truth. I will confront our past and the history of our families, and I will do this with Emily by my side. With a determined look, Henry turned to leave. He knew he needed to find Emily. He needed to show her that what they felt for each other was stronger than the ties of the past. Upon arriving at the mansion, nostalgia and pain washed over him. He headed to the room where Emily used to stay and found her sitting alone, her eyes lost in the distance. Emily, he called softly. We need to talk. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and hope. Henry, did you find out something? Yes, he said, moving closer. The truth is more complicated than we thought. The clock, it belonged to an ancestor who was close to your family. And the debt that sparked all this rivalry? It was a stain on our legacy, but it doesn't have to be the end of our story. She furrowed her brow, confused. But what does that mean for us? It means we can rewrite this story. We can transform the clock, which was a symbol of guilt, into a legacy of love and forgiveness. He took her hand, holding it firmly. I want to do this with you. Emily's eyes sparkled, and she realized that despite all the pain, there was a glimmer of hope. Do you really believe we can overcome this? Yes, Henry replied earnestly. Together, we can face anything, and I won't let the past define us. Let's build our future, one that is free from betrayal and filled with love. Emily smiled, a smile that lit up the room. She knew there was still a long road ahead, but finally, she felt that she was not alone. Together, they were ready to face whatever came their way.